All right. Welcome back, viewer. Mr. Wayne here. And today is part 18 of Master Key System. It is Wednesday, the 28th of May. Right now it is 6:37. And currently now I have Wednesdays off. I requested Wednesdays off. Now I have Tuesdays and Wednesdays off so I could hit my contract meetings. We had a contract meeting today, and a lot of patience is needed through this transition phase of getting my realtor's license. I'm in Washington. I came to Washington from California, and I got a lot of back-end things that I need to do. And me, I like to do things quickly, and patience is not always something that I deal with the best, but I gotta be responsible with the things that I have, and the time will come when I'll be able to move forward move forward in the way that I would like to. In the meantime, we are on part 18. Right. We have, plus this week, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. We have 7 weeks left of this process. This has been a very long, enduring process, a committed process, because I could be doing anything right now on Wednesdays, but when I made the decision months ago to do this and to record it and whatnot, do masterminds on it, we committed to it, and we have to keep seeing it through. And we're actually almost done. 6 weeks isn't much at all. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started already. So, introduction to part 18. In order to grow, we must obtain what is necessary for our growth. This is brought about through the law of attraction. This principle is the sole means by which the individual is differentiated from the universal. So what Hannah was saying right there is that we exist as individuals because of the law of attraction. And in order for us to move forward, we have to obtain those things that are necessary for us to move forward. And knowing the law and how the law works, we will just naturally bring things to us and around us that will help us to move forward. But obviously we need to make that choice, right? We need to make the decision and take action on those things when they present themselves to us, because we still have choices. So ultimately what that tells us is that there's always something in front of us at all times that, if we decide to take action on that thing, will help us grow to the next level in our life. So he says, think for a moment, what would a man be if he were not a husband, father, or brother? If he were not interested in the social, economical, political, or religious world? He would be nothing but an abstract, theoretical ego. He exists, therefore, only in his relation to the whole, in his relation to other men, in his relation to society. This relation constitutes his environment, and in no other way. So what he is telling us there is, if we could be married, you could have your car, you could work at a specific place, you could be a man or a woman, you could be and have, regardless of what it is, regardless of your beliefs, at the very core and center of your being is just an abstract theoretical ego. It comes back to the I am. It comes back to pure awareness. Because remember, in meditation, when you're meditating, you're going into a place and a space beyond thought. You're going into a place and a space beyond the consciousness of being within a body. Now, you'll reach this place once you gain control over the body, once you are able to concentrate specifically in the silence without thinking of anything, right? Your entire awareness comes into just pure being. And this pure being in its fullness, in its real nature, as just something that is, as the spirit, as who you actually are. Remember, the world within, the world of thought, the world of emotion, the world of awareness, the world of consciousness. So he's saying consciousness itself is what you are. Now, how could it be otherwise? How a reason it's possible for a man to believe that he is a woman, or for a woman to believe that they are a man, right? Just trapped in the opposite gender, right? That all leads to belief that shows the segregation between the mental world, the world of beliefs, as compared to this physical world that we live in, that we experience our reality through, right? That shows how consciousness itself is separate from man, but is connected to it, right? Living through it. It's the I am. And we know this I am and the identity of God itself is the infinite I am, the great I am, the universal consciousness, the universal creative force, the creative power of everything. Remember, it's the basis of all matter. And being the basis of all matter, it's also the basis of who you are. Because we can say, I am. There's only one. And we are the one living and expressing ourselves, our identities, our own beliefs about ourselves and about the world in which we live through this being, which we know as man, the human, the woman, right? The human, the woman, the man, whatever, right? Humanity itself. He says, it is evident, therefore, that the individual is simply the differentiation of the one universal mind, quote, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world, end quote. And his so-called individuality or personality consists of nothing but the manner in which he relates with the whole. So, the core nature of our being is something that just is. It's awareness. We're conscious. It's consciousness. But this consciousness has to clothe itself as an individual. It has to clothe itself as something. And he says that this clothing becomes our personality. It becomes our behavior. It becomes our habitual thinking process. Right? And that in turn stems from what we believe ourselves to be in connection with our environment. It's amazing. It's a very interesting concept. It's a very interesting thought, because I know there are self-improvement leaders. They talk about, they'll share a story, right? You could have two brothers. They both grew up in the same household. They had the same parents within the same neighborhood. But one of the brothers becomes independent and wealthy, and he's happy. Well, the other brother does not, and he becomes, he may become the complete opposite. But it's dependent upon decisions, right? It's dependent, the difference between them was what each of those two brothers believed about themselves, and how they related themselves with the external world. Because one of the brother that was successful had a very high, you could say he has a very high self-esteem, a very high belief in himself. And he made the decision to do better, to be better, regardless of his circumstances, regardless of the external. While the other brother may have used every external factor as an excuse as to why he wasn't successful, right? And the difference between those individuals, obviously, it's in their personality. and that consists mainly of how they related themselves with their situations and circumstance. He goes on telling us, "Is this we call his environment, and is brought about by the law of attraction." Part 18, which follows, has something more to say concerning this important law. It is very interesting too, because how could it be otherwise if we become the things that we think about? And we find ourselves surrounded by material things that are in alignment with the thoughts which we harbored prior to that experience. Remember, because thought is a vibration, it is energy, it's a creative, subtle, vibratory energy that goes out and vibrates in harmony with matter, with material that is in alignment with the vibration of their own thought. Remember, it's all quantum physics today, it's science. The greatest sciences of today have already proven that matter is not solid, that it is vibrating at its core. And this being true, if everything is in vibration, even matter in that thought is a vibration. And the law says that the things that we think about, whatever we vibrate into the infinite mind, will attach to other like vibrations. By the law of attraction, those things will be brought to us, and we will experience them in our world. Ultimately telling us that, hey, we are creating our lives moment by moment by the thoughts we are thinking now, right? The life that I will experience tomorrow is dependent upon the thinking that I have today, and likewise with you. So that's the end of the introduction. Let's get started with part 18. So he says, there is a change in the thought of the world. This change is silently transpiring in our midst, and is more important than any which the world has undergone since the downfall of paganism. The present revolution in the opinions of all classes of men, the highest and most cultured of men, as well as those of the laboring class, stands unparalleled in the history of the world. Science has of late made such vast discoveries, has revealed such an infinity of resources, has unveiled such enormous possibilities and such unsuspected forces, that scientific men more and more hesitate to affirm certain theories as established and beyond doubt, or to deny other theories as absurd or impossible. So he's saying that, and remember, all this was written over 100 years ago. This book came out in 1912, 1913, or 1916. It was well over 100 years ago. So even the scientific discoveries they found, because it pertains to the mind back then, has revealed, and the discoveries were so great, he is saying, that it is changing the direction of the entire world, that it will change the direction of the entire world. And any discoveries made before these spiritual mental discoveries, they pale in comparison to the science of spirituality, the science of mind, because we know mind being the creative force of the entire universe, and that we ourselves are mind and expression through the thoughts which we think. And since mind is creative and is the creative force of all matter, it only follows that the way we use our mind, the way we apply our mind and our forces to specific things in our life, are going to determine our material experience. And this understanding, this scientific discovery, is the greatest of all discoveries. And when you even look, and if you really dive deep into this explanation and connect it with Christ, remember, this shows everything that Christ had taught, with God being present in the flesh, and how we can manifest the Spirit of God in the flesh as humans. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. And that since we've already covered, right, the difference between the mental body and this physical body, and the power of our beliefs, and how they're separated from this like our beliefs. We could believe anything, and no matter what, our physical body will work the way it works regardless of our belief. What I'm saying is like the division between our realities. Right? Like, we're not barred down when it comes to beliefs, when it comes to our mind and our mental programming. We're not barred down by the physical body at all. That our mental body is something completely different and connected to the physical. And because of that, because of this differentiation, the different levels between the mental and physical, the human mind, has the ability to express, right? We could express anything that we believe and understand and how we think. And through the Word of God, and understanding the Word of God, and understanding the wisdom of God, and thinking upon that wisdom, meditating upon it. Because remember, consciousness, we possess the things that we have possessed in consciousness. We manifest the things that we then gain hold of in consciousness. So possessing the Spirit of God and understanding the wisdom of God, which we learned through Christ, will enable us to represent in our character, our conduct, the Spirit of God in the flesh. We will embody all that God is in the flesh, which is exactly what Christ did and what he came to show us to do. Because that's the ultimate purpose of man, to be in unity with God and to live as God within a material form. So he says a new civilization is being born. Customs, creeds, and precedent are passing. Vision, faith, and service are taking their place. The fetters of tradition are being melted off from humanity, and as the impurities of materialism are being consumed, thought is being liberated, and truth is rising full-robed before an astonished multitude. Excuse me. The whole world is on the eve of a new consciousness, a new power, and a new realization within the self. Physical science has resolved matter into molecules, molecules into atoms, atoms into energy, and it has remained for Mr. J.A. Fleming in an address before the Royal Institution to resolve this energy into mind. He says, and I quote, "In its ultimate essence, energy may be incomprehensible by us except as an exhibition of the direct operation of that which we call mind or will." End quote. So what Mr. Fleming says right there is that ultimately, and it's in the pureness of its nature, energy cannot be explained in any other way than as a direct exhibition, as a direct activity, so to speak, of consciousness, of mind or will. That the human mind, human awareness, human thought is not separate, like your will is not separate than the infinite. When it comes to its nature, right, what it is. And this mind is the indwelling and ultimate. It is immanent in matter as in spirit. It is it is the sustaining, energizing, all-pervading spirit of the universe. So remember how we looked back at the subconscious mind, that we have the presence of infinite intelligence within us, that we have God within us. It's even biblical. It's told to us by Christ himself that that our bodies are the temple of the living God. I believe Apostle Paul was the one who said that. But Christ tells us the kingdom of heaven is within you, right? It is within us. It is Yes, it may be outside of us, it may be separate from us, but it's also within us. And the reason it's in us is because this universal mind, this intelligence, which created all matter, animates all living things, is present within all solidified matter, like a rock, right? The rock may not be alive like we are as conscious beings, but the consciousness of the infinite mind is present within the rock, because there has to be a force, there has to be an intelligence which has brought and held the atoms of what that rock is made of together, just like us, right? This universal power, this infinite intelligence, in the workings of its wisdom, of its laws, how it brought us together and into being. Right? This intelligence is within us as our subconscious mind. In our conscious mind, our individual center of I amness, we're not separate from it. We're made too out of the exact same power. Remember how they told us that the difference is in the degree of which this power manifests. Because we know we have a power within us. We know we don't need to focus on making our heart beat. We don't need to focus on making our nails grow. I say it in just about every one of these videos. We don't need to digest our food, or we don't need to renew our cells. We don't need to do any of that, because the automated system within us, the intelligence of something within us greater than us, is doing that for us. Our job is to protect this power and guide it towards the direction of creating specific things in our life. As Christ tells us to, it is not I that doeth the work, but the Father that dwelleth within me. He doeth the work. There is a power within you that will do the work necessary, but you have to direct it to do that work. Because Christ in Jesus was a perfect manifestation of nature, of just these natural laws. He was so connected to it. I and the Father are one. He lived in unity with the workings and wisdom of universal truth and of universal power. And because of that unity, he had been given access to that power and to express it through him as a man. Because remember how we are told we are all batteries, we are all mechanisms for the expression of this power. And how we were explaining in the part prior to this, you could have, right, you have your electricity. Electricity always existed, but until somebody understood electricity and formulated the law, understood the law behind it and formulated it, we were able to create channels in machines that this electricity was able to power. Now our entire world is powered by electricity, which is a natural universal force, just a manifestation of, just one of the simple manifestations of the universal mind. And we ourselves, being the image of God in the flesh, being made out of the same substance and things as God, just like that, like the mechanism attached to the electricity, right? The manifestation of that electricity is dependent upon the mechanism which it is attached to. As we've talked about with, you have your heater and your fan. They're both powered by the exact same power, which is the electricity. But the difference is between the two is the fact that one is a heater and one is a fan. It's the exact same thing with these infinite manifestations, like the dog barking outside. In us, we are made out of the exact same, that dog is made out of the exact same substance and force that we are made out of, right? We all came from this one universal mind, this nature, the intelligence of nature. But the difference between how that power is manifested is through the mechanism that it's manifesting through, right? We are humans, the dog is a dog. But the difference being, since we are God's highest form of creation on this planet, we express more of this infinite mind's powers as compared to what the dog will, because man is just, they're a different mechanism, so to speak. So he says, every living thing must be sustained by this omnipotent intelligence. And we find the difference in individual lives to be largely measured by the degree of this intelligence which they manifest. So as I was just saying, and explaining the difference between things, that we all came from the same thing, Mr. Hanel just said it right here too. We all came from the omnipotent intelligence. And the difference between, like the explanation I did with the brothers earlier, one brother went off, became extremely successful. The other one did not. For one did not let his situations and circumstances dictate how he was going to think about himself and about his relation with the environment. The other brother blamed the environment and his situations and circumstances for his lack of success. As he says right there, the difference between every person's individual life is dependent upon the degree of how they themselves are manifesting this power, how they're using it. It's amazing, because you hear the most successful people in the world, and you hear thought leaders, and you hear coaches. This is what they talk about. These are the very things they talk about. They talk about the will. They talk about discipline. They talk about your thinking. They talk about the decisions you make. And it all leads back to the science of how, exactly why that is, right? Why is it the way? Why is your success dependent upon the way you think, right? This is the legitimate scientific breakdown behind why it is. Because everything is vibration. Your mind is creative. When you think, you're sending out a vibration. All matter is vibrating at a specific frequency. We as humans have the power to create whatever frequency that we want through our thoughts, through our emotions, through our mental pictures. We have the ability to do that, and because we can create whatever vibration we want, we could ultimately manifest whatever physical reality we desire to manifest. It's amazing. It's absolutely phenomenal. The dog can't do this. Right? I mean, all respect to the dog, but sometimes I don't even know if anything is going on in the mind of the dog, right? Because their consciousness isn't developed like ours, right? They don't, as far as I know, I'm not the dog. As far as I know, he might not be thinking anything at all. He's just living his life, being run mainly through his subconscious programmings. Because we all have subconscious programmings, right? We have to eat. We have to eat just to sustain. We have to drink water. These are necessary requirements for our survival. You know, when it comes to reproduction, right? We all have the necessity and need to reproduce. It's just part of life. It's just part of life. And that desire is driven not so much by us, but by the power of the subconscious within us, because it's just part of our subconscious programming. It's a part of our just evolution, right? And how we evolve as a species. It is greater intelligence that places the animal in a higher scale of being than the plant, the man higher than the animal. And we find that this increased intelligence is again indicated by the power of the individual to control modes of action, and thus to conscientiously adjust himself to his environment. Remember how he opened this entire program with that we already have the power within us. We have the power because we are the power. It's in our nature. It's in our DNA. It's just who we are as consciousness itself. But he's saying, but the power, and we did say this earlier, the power, our ability, it's how we use this power and our ability to think. Like he says right here, it's dependent upon, right? The way this power is manifested in the individual's life is dependent upon how the individual is going to control modes of action, right? Modes of action such as his thinking, such as his emotions, the actions which he is going to take, what thoughts and ideas he is going to act upon. And thus, adding on to that is our ability to adjust ourselves to our environment. Remember, in order to change your environment and to grow beyond it, you have to think higher than the environment you are in. Because if you think on the level of your environment, you'll get stuck in that environment. You'll become one with the environment. And if you're in an environment that is not suited to your liking, it is up to you to expand your mind beyond that environment to manifest a different environment so you could move in a different direction. Remember, you're not limited other than your I said this in the last video, as Bob Proctor told us, we're only limited by a lack of attention and poverty of imagination. You're limited by your inability to see a better future for yourself. You're limited by your inability to believe in a better future for yourself. And you're also limited by your level of keeping attentive to it. Remember, we have to attend to it mentally. And as we are told, this is where the willpower comes into play, to be able to think and hold a line of thought for an extended period of time until it comes into manifestation. As we know, too, the bigger the thing, the bigger the idea of which you have, the longer it's going to take to manifest. As compared to smaller things, the smaller the idea, the quicker it'll manifest. Remember, like the difference between the oxen and the wheatgrass. Right? If you're growing wheatgrass, obviously the wheatgrass is going to grow much, much quicker, but it's a much, much smaller supply. It's a smaller thing. As compared to your oxen is going to take longer to grow. It's going to take more of your time and attention for it to grow. It's going to take more of your resources for it to grow. But in the end of its growth, the rewards of its, whatever you're growing it for, right, the rewards of that will be greater because it took longer. It's the exact same principle applied to whatever it is you're manifesting. As we're told, Rome was not built in a day. Rome takes years to build. Now, again, that's just an analogy. Who knows how long Rome actually took to build. But you get the idea. You get what we're saying. It is this adjustment that occupies the attention of the greatest minds. And this adjustment consists in nothing else than the recognition of an existing order in the universal mind. For it is well known that this mind will obey us precisely in proportion as we first obey it. Now again, as we talked about with Christ, we know Christ is the image of God in man, and we know man was destined to express the spirit and characteristics of God in the flesh, enabling us to become gods in the flesh. What he's telling us here is our degree to harmonize with the law will in turn be our degree to use these laws in our lives. That these laws are already working in our lives, but we may not be aware of it. It doesn't mean that they don't exist. What it does mean is that you just lack awareness of its existence. But once we become conscious of it and aware of it, and we utilize it to our benefit, this power will then be used for our benefit. We won't be living our lives just as experiencing life outside of us as chance, right? We will be living our lives as deliberately planned out, as deliberately we set a goal and we're moving towards the goal, and we know as we move towards the goal by the law, we have the faith and the hope in the knowing, the understanding that we will attract the things to us externally to help us achieve and reach that goal, so we can move forward towards it in faith, because the law will work and we will be working it. As he is saying here, right, the universal mind will obey us precisely as we first obey it, as it was with Christ. Christ became God in the flesh because he obeyed the wisdom and knowledge of God. And he lived from that wisdom. And because he lived from it and thought from it, he then manifested the powers of God in the flesh. And likewise with us. And likewise will we do this when it comes to the manifestation of the things in our lives. It is the recognition of natural laws that has enabled us to annihilate time and space, to soar in the air, and to make iron float. And the greater the degree of intelligence, the greater will be our recognition of these natural laws, and the greater will be the power we can possess. So he's telling us right there, our goal is to keep expanding our consciousness, to keep increasing our awareness of the law in our unity with the infinite mind, so we could understand more and more of what this universe is that we live in. And through the greater understanding of the universe, it will be therefore give us greater power, so to speak, when it comes to applying these principles, applying the power of God in our lives. It is the recognition of the self as an individualization of this universal intelligence that enables the individual to control those forms of intelligence which have not yet reached this level of self-recognition. They do not know that this universal intelligence permeates all things, ready to be called into action. So what he told us right there is that those of us that understand this power, because we understand it and because we use it, this alone will give us power over others and to be able to control others, because they themselves do not understand this power nor how it works. Because this power is manifested through our understanding of the law and the understanding of ourselves. But we know that, hey, we're here to use our powers for good. We're here to use who and what we are for the betterment of society, for the betterment of the human race. That we're not here to control others. We don't want to control others. We want everybody to be self-aware enough and moral enough to be able to take this and use it for the betterment of everyone and everything, and even themselves. Will it happen in this lifetime? Probably not. Who knows? Anything is possible. But we know through revelation that everything has to fall apart first before the establishment of the kingdom of heaven can happen. And we know that we haven't yet reached that point. So we may not experience it in this life, but we know ultimately that's the final goal. That's the end result. That way of thinking is what is going to be needed for the establishment of the kingdom of heaven on earth. And that's also the thinking needed for the establishment of doing greater things and greater things in general in this life until that kingdom is established. Right? Because it'll everyone knowing about it and using it for the right, that is That is what's needed for the living of the highest vision of humanity possible. That everybody has to do it. Everybody has to be there. They do not know that it is responsive to every demand, and they are therefore in bondage to the law of their own being. So he ends that statement saying that those that aren't aware of these laws, who are not aware of themselves, they're in bondage to their own being. They're in bondage to their lack of awareness of it. They're in bondage to not applying it, not using it. So they're in bondage to themselves, ultimately. That is what he is saying. And because they're in bondage to themselves, right, it's because of this process that others will be able to have control over them. Those that are not in bondage to themselves and that are living in unity with the workings of natural laws. It's very interesting. So I remember hearing, it was he was the author that wrote Sermon on the Mount. Hold on, we might actually. Emmett Fox. I believe it was Emmett Fox. I remember hearing something from Emmett Fox years ago, and he was talking about the law of being. And Horatio Dresser mentions the law of being in the history of New Thought. And, since we know I am, right, the center of consciousness itself and the center of our being is I am. And we know this law of attraction, this law of cause and effect, what we bring to ourselves materially in the life we live and experience is dependent upon our being, our thoughts, our emotions. Because obviously living in unity with, as we're talking, embodying the wisdom and spirit of God, we become the Spirit of God. We embody it. We attach ourselves to it, and we become it. It becomes a part of our being, who we are. And we will therefore attract the things to us that are in accordance with that, the nature of who we are. And those that don't understand these principles, that are just thinking whatever they want to think, not aware of how they become what it is that they think about, not aware that they are attracting things externally to them that are in accordance with their thought. They're in bondage to their own being. They're in bondage to living in, I want to use the word ignorance. I'm not going to say stupid, because there are very capable and very smart, intelligent people that do not even know these laws out there in the world. Let's continue. He says, thought is creative, and the principle on which the law is based is sound and legitimate, and is inherent in the nature of things. But this creative power does not originate in the individual, but in the universal, which is the source and foundation of all energy and substance. The individual is simply the channel for the distribution of this energy. I keep getting attacked by the hiccups. I'm sorry. We did eat probably about an hour ago now. But I know after I eat or drink something and I speak a lot, I tend to get the hiccups. The individual is simply the means by which the universal produces the various combinations which result in the formation of phenomena, which depends upon the law of vibration, whereby various rates of rapidity of motion in the primary substance form new substances, only in certain exact numerical ratios. So according to our thoughts and the vibratory activity of our thinking, the things around us move in exact mathematical ratios. That's what he's saying, because we know the universe, it was created through order, right? Order. Genevieve Barron says order is the first law of heaven, the first law of God, that everything came into order out of disorder, which makes a lot of sense because, as Hanel told us, without knowledge we have ignorance, and ignorance is the lack of knowledge, it's a lack of wisdom. Ignorance of itself does not, he said, it doesn't really exist, right? Because the existence of things comes from the principle of something itself, which is wisdom. Because we know when we wisen up, when we gain wisdom, when we gain understanding, that will immediately dissolve the ignorance. Just like light, right? Darkness is what it is, right? The example used, darkness doesn't really exist. It only exists in the absence of light, because light is the main principle. We know this to be true because once light is available, once light is present, the darkness will instantly disappear. It'll flee. Let's say this candle, for example, if this light was off, if it was dark outside and the window, my box window was closed, it'd be completely dark in here. But once I light this candle and this candle gives off light, the darkness will then disappear because now the principle of light is in play. So it shows light is the life-giving principle, while darkness is simply the absence of that principle. Same thing with order and disorder. Order is the main principle, while disorder is just the absence of it. It's very interesting concepts and a very interesting idea. And even with this, right, these exact mathematical ratios that he is telling us that are the experiences of our life manifest through, right? It's mathematical. Right, the infinite mind will bring to us the things we think into it through mathematical certainty. That's why we experience serendipity. So let's continue. Thought is the invisible link by which the individual comes into communication with the universal, the finite with the infinite, the seen with the unseen. Thought is the magic by which the human is transformed into a being who thinks and knows and feels and acts. Which makes a lot of sense because we are what we are because of our ability to think. Right? The dog, again, if that dog, for whatever reason, grew a large sense of awareness and a giant forebrain, and he suddenly had reasoning powers and the ability to think very deeply, the dog wouldn't just be some normal dog, right? The dog will then become the dog. That's the dog, right? You know what I'm saying? Like that dog will become just more than just a dog because of its ability to think greater. The same thing with humans. It is our thoughts and our ability to think and manifest greater ideals, which really, in reality, makes us who and what we are as creatures, as humans. Earl Nightingale had said that the only difference between a man and a pig is his mind, or a man and a horse is his mind. It doesn't matter. The difference between man and any other creature on this planet is simply his mind, his consciousness, his ability to think, to reason, to build mental images, to build things. It is our thinking which makes us different in our ability to think. And as he says right here, thought, because we can think, thought is the invisible link by which the individual comes into communication with the universal, the finite with the infinite, the seen with the unseen. Thought is the magic by which the human is transformed into a being who thinks and knows and feels and acts. As the proper apparatus has enabled the eye to discover worlds without, number millions of miles away, so with the proper understanding, man has been enabled to communicate with the universal mind, the source of all power. The understanding which is usually developed is about as valuable as a VCR without a videotape. In fact, it is usually nothing more than a belief, which means nothing at all. The savages of the Cannibal Islands believe something, but that proves nothing. Okay, so what he is telling us right here, okay, he says the understanding which is usually developed is about as valuable as a VCR without a videotape. Now we know that VCR cannot be played or used unless there is a videotape, a source for it to be played through. Right, and he says, in fact, it is usually nothing more than a belief. So what he is saying, he's telling us that our thought, a thought that is not in alignment with the workings of natural law, is going to be likewise how the VCR is without a videotape. Right, you need to have one attached to the other for it to work. So what he is telling us, because we could believe something that isn't true, right? As I stated at the beginning of this video, men can believe themselves to be women. Women could believe themselves to be men. Does it really make it true? No, because biologically speaking, we live and experience ourselves in this physical body, right? I'm a man. I was born a man. I will always be a man. Just like a woman was born a woman, they will always be a woman. It's biologically built into their physical system, their subconscious system. Right? Any other belief than that, a man believing they're a woman, is simply a belief. Right? Because it's a belief does not mean it's not true, because his thinking is not in alignment with who they actually are as an individual. Right? It has to be a belief that can be proven to be true, as he ends it. Right? He says the savages of the Cannibal Islands believe something, but that proves nothing. Right? Your beliefs, the strongest and best of all beliefs, are those that can be proven to be true, because it goes beyond a belief. It's not just a belief. It becomes a legitimate fact, a fact of nature, a fact of life, a universal fact, a fact of law. It becomes something that was set above just us, that was set by something above us. He says the only belief which is of any value to anyone is a belief that has been put to a test and demonstrated to be a fact. It is then no longer a belief, but has become a living faith or truth. Now this goes back to what I was saying earlier. When you understand yourself, when you understand the laws of psychology and how we become what we think about, when you understand that, hey, we live and move and have our existence in this infinite universal mind, and that this mind permeates all of space and animates all material things. There's no such thing as empty space. It's filled with a living presence. It's filled with the living God. And that our thought being vibratory, everything being in vibration, as our thought travels along this infinite mind and matches with other like vibrations, even those that are mental vibrations as well, energetic vibrations, your spiritual vibrations, and matter, your material vibrations, all those will attract and attach to the vibration you yourself are emitting, and you will experience those things in your life. Or when you understand that that's what's going on, I know for a fact, viewer, you've thought of something and you ended up experiencing it in your life. You thought of a person and they ended up calling you. You were with somebody and you were thinking something and they ended up saying it. And you were like, hey, I was just thinking the same thing. Or maybe you said something. Then they said, hey, I was just thinking the same thing. Remember, thought is vibration, and it's traveling through the ether. It's not something that is just kept to ourselves. Thought is legitimately something that extends beyond us. It is a vibration, it is an energy, it is a thing. And again, once you understand that this is the life we live in, this is how this universe works that we live in, the things we do, we can do with faith. Right? Let's say you have a goal and you make your decision to start moving towards that goal. You can move towards that goal with confidence. You can move towards that goal with patience. You can move towards that goal with faith that you will meet all the requirements you need for the achievement of that goal. Right? Because you will begin to attract the things to you for its manifestation. And this truth has been put to the test by hundreds of thousands of people and has been found to be the truth exactly in proportion to the usefulness of the apparatus which they used. Excuse me. Now, this is the entirety of what New Thought is. Right, he says, this truth has been put to the test by hundreds of thousands of people. Everything that the New Thought movement had stood for in the past, which I believe will continue to stand for in the future, has had their results in the things they manifested through the usage of this power, the power of thought. Right? It's been found in exactly in proportion to the usefulness of the apparatus which they use, right? Which would be themselves, their mind, and the universal mind which they are connected to. How well they use the law, which in turn came from how well they themselves controlled and directed their own mind. Remember, that's ultimately all you need to focus on, is controlling and directing your mind, your mental forces to your goals and what you want to achieve. The law itself just works by itself. No matter what, the law will bring what you are thinking to you. A man would not expect to locate stars hundreds of millions of miles away without a sufficiently strong telescope. And for this reason, science is continually engaged in building larger and more powerful telescopes, and is continually rewarded by additional knowledge of the heavenly bodies. So with understanding, men are continually making progress in the methods which they use to come into communication with the universal mind and its infinite possibilities. We know that to be true today through our understanding of quantum physics. That we now have a better understanding of these laws and how they work. When it comes to the double slit experiment, when it comes to the electron, when it comes to the mind, that the electron itself can exist as both a vibration and as a particle. And whether it's a vibration or a particle is dependent upon the existence of an observer, the existence of a mind, the existence of somebody who perceives it to be what it is. But regardless of the truth behind the perception, or regardless of what the perception has brings it out to be, there is still the ultimate truth. The truth of what makes even perception to be what it is. And that itself is a person's thinking process. The universal mind manifests itself in the objective through the principle of attraction that each atom has for every other atom in infinite degrees of intensity. It is by this principle of combining and attracting that things are brought together. This principle is of universal application and is the sole means whereby the purpose of existence is carried into effect. So this principle of attraction, this law of attraction, this fundamental force that brought all atoms into existence, brought all atoms together to create a being, to manifest something. It's the same principle. It's the same application, so to speak. It's the exact same thing that is happening to bring you the things needed in your life to further you along in your path towards your goals. He says the expression of growth is met in a most beautiful manner through the instrumentality of this universal principle. As we stated earlier too, even the law of growth is dependent upon the law of attraction. So ultimately, the more you continue to grow, the more you expand in consciousness, the greater and better things will be what you attract in your external world. How could it, right? It has to be that way, because the law works in accordance to your growth in consciousness, to who you are as an individual, to how you think and express the powers of your thought processes. So obviously, the more you grow in mind, the more you're going to grow in your thinking. And because as you continue to grow in your thinking, you're going to grow in your manifestations. You're just going to manifest higher and higher things. He says, in order to grow, we must obtain what is essential for our growth. But as we are all at times a complete thought entity, this completeness makes it possible for us to receive only as we give. Growth is therefore conditioned upon reciprocal action. So what he is telling us there is that we have to continue to grow in our thinking, our thoughts, in order to continue to grow in the things that we attract in our external world. And we find that the mental plane, and we find that on the mental plane, like attracts like, that mental vibrations respond only to the extent of their vibratory harmony. So as I said earlier, not only are we attracting other vibrations, mental vibrations, we are attracting things to us on the same mental level. We're attracting it in the physical level as well as matter. It's very interesting too, because I know you may have learned something from an experience, and then you end up just having a conversation with a stranger that was legitimately just talking about how they were going through that experience themselves, or how they were just talking about it with somebody else. Right? You two were attracted to each other. It is clear, therefore, that thoughts of abundance will respond only to similar thoughts. The wealth of the individual is seen to be what he inherently is. Affluence within is found to be the secret of attraction for affluence without. Again, as we're told, when it comes to attracting money, when it comes to attracting physical resources like wealth, right? Material wealth, you have to develop a wealth consciousness. You have to develop a thinking process that brings wealth. As we were talking about earlier, it's dependent upon the law of being. You have to be a person of wealth on the inside first, and then you will manifest the things externally to you that are in alignment with that wealth thinking. Right? Napoleon Hill calls it the money consciousness, the wealth consciousness. We said it before when it comes to fitness. Right? If you want to attract fitness in your life, if you want to get stronger, you have to develop a thinking that will bring these things to you that'll help you manifest it. Now, of course, action is absolutely necessary. You must take action on the thoughts, right? You could think about exercising all the time, but you have to take legitimate action towards that exercise. You have to go through legitimate physical resistance. You have to put yourself through what is this word I'm looking for? It's deliberate pain, right? You have to conscientiously put yourself through pain, and through adaptation under stress, your body will adapt to the hard level of training that you put it through. Same thing with the mind and through meditation. Going through a deep meditation phase or a session will help you strengthen your awareness. It'll help you strengthen your consciousness, and it'll help you discipline your thinking. And it will allow you to embody the image of the things you're thinking about the most. Now, that's what this whole system is, right? It's going into the silence, clearing the mind, pulling the weeds of old thought processes, and legitimately planting the seeds of thought into your subconscious that are conducive to the future and the life that you wish to manifest. Right? It all starts first in the mind. Again, back to consciousness. In order to develop the physique you want, you have to develop a consciousness of health. If you want healthy relationships, you have to develop a consciousness which will allow you to have healthy relationships. It all comes from your mental attitude, your thinking process, and your actions. You acting on the thoughts of which you are thinking. Okay, let's continue. He says, the ability to produce is found to be the real source of wealth of the individual. It is for this reason that he who has his heart in his work is certain to meet with unbounded success. He will give and continually give, and the more he gives, the more he will receive. Now, you hear a lot of things in the world today about, you have to do what you love to do. It doesn't matter whether you love doing what you do as long as you're making money, right? All that leads back to the individual's value themselves and what they find of value. Or because you could have, like, it goes both ways. It really depends on, it depends on the society we live in, the businesses that are in play, and the interest of people in regards to your interests. For example, you could have somebody that absolutely, going back to dogs, they love dogs, and I don't know if that would be a good one, because a lot of people love dogs. I love dogs. Because I was thinking shelters and things and whatnot, but people do donate to shelters because they believe in shelters. They love dogs. They find value in participating in making sure a dog has a home and things and whatnot. But going back to values, let's say New Thought Society, for example, like me building this society. Not a lot of people know about it. It's something I stumbled upon, something I found very intriguing, something that has changed my life for the better, and it's something that I want to bring into the world, to expand in the world. But knowing that it's not very big, it'll be much, much harder for me to do anything with this, right? I love doing this. I love the information found herein. I love talking about this with people. But ultimately, this is it's spiritual. It's mainly based in science and spirituality. And unless we could use the information to do something of, I don't want to use the word real value, because I see the real value in something like this. But as compared to real estate, for example, like, this is an idealistic thing, right? This is something that you could believe in, think from. Ultimately, it's an ideal, right? It's an internal thing. What New Thought is, it ultimately stands for the spirit. It stands for something internal. Now, real estate, for example, we know real estate is something that's absolutely needed, right? It is a necessity. Doesn't matter what you believe or your beliefs about anything, right? It's a necessity. People need housing. People want to start families. People want to start a lot of things. We know societies must exist. We know civilization has to continue to grow with the growing population. So housing, no matter what, housing is going to continue to expand, right? Now, the coachings that I've been to, the meetings that I've been involved in, the earnestness that I have to getting started, I want to get started right now. But with my current finances, I have to be smart about it, because I can't shoot myself in the foot trying to lift my other foot forward, right? We can't be doing that. We have to make sure that both our feet are walking, because both feet working are what's really going to get us there. But anyway, it's a business that is an absolute necessity, whether somebody believes in it or not, right? We know that when it comes to real estate. Something like this, like real estate, you have people that get into it that absolutely love it. Then you have other people that do it and they absolutely dread it, but they do it because they know there are great rewards that come from it. Okay, ultimately that's what he's saying with us here, right? He who has our heart in our work is certain to meet with unbounded success, because he gives and he will continually give. Walmart, for example, I've been dreading Walmart a lot. It's right, I'm much more excited about the real estate opportunity than I am just being a Walmart associate. It's just not, it doesn't align with me as a person or as my values. It took a minute for me to learn that, because there were some parts of it that I really did enjoy. But the more I stayed there and I seen the future that I would have if I stayed there, it's not a future that I would want. It's not a life that I would want to live. Now, real estate is something that will be able to enable me to live the life that I want to live. Plus, I love helping people. Now, how great would it be to help a family change their life, or start a new chapter, or even start a family, right? You need to have your own place. You need to have your house. And that's what I'm saying. Like, we know it's something in the market that's an absolute necessity. And sometimes people do things, whether they love it or not, for the rewards. Now that again leads to as I said earlier, what a person deems as valuable to them. Because remember the question that I mentioned the other day, that our one of the coaches in real estate, the one who's running the meeting, that apparently I was the only one that answered correctly out of 150 meetings. When he mentioned the possibility, is it possible for somebody to live a life not worth living by, even if they're living in abundance, right? Is it possible to not live a life worth living, even if living in abundance? And I said, of course it's possible. Or it was the opposite. I remember my answer was, of course not. But ultimately, it's, of course you could live a life of abundance that isn't a life worth living. Because a life worth living is dependent upon the type of life the individual wants to live themselves. Again, it's based on their values, what they find valuable. And back to what I was saying with, you hear some wonderful, wonderful coaches, wonderful thought leaders, some of the greatest coaches that we know today in the world, right? The biggest names. Some of them talk about, right, they have millions and millions of dollars. They're doing great things in the world with their money, and they're able to do these things. But some of them talk about, hey, you have to love what you do. Then others say, hey, it's not about loving what you do. It's about doing something that is needed in the market, right? So that's the whole point I've been making through speaking of all this. It's really, it doesn't matter, like the law is going to work for you no matter what. Where you are giving, where you are giving your attention, where you are giving your energy, you are going to get back what you had given simply by the law of compensation and the law of attraction. But if you could somehow find what you love to do, something, and it being something that is truly needed, then you know that you struck gold, and you are a very lucky individual. I believe I'm a very lucky individual with the things that I have. Even with this, I see the opportunity with it, but I know I will be able to do so much more with something like this if I had the finances, if I had money. Because to me, this is an altruistic thing, right? It's spirituality. It's like church, right? Church, people participate and donate to the church, but ultimately the church isn't for, at least it's not an establishment that's supposed to be about making money. Even though there are some pastors that make it about money, it's an establishment that's not meant to be just about the money. The money is there for the church to be able to help people, to save souls, to lead people to the power of God that exists within them. And we can do that, and we could do that through multiple ways, or especially with real estate. Imagine, right? Like this is an idealistic society. It's a Christ society. It's a godly society that New Thought is, that we're working on building as an ideal. But imagine taking this and attaching it to building physical societies. Because in real estate, we could be a part of developments. We could be a part of productions. We could be a part of plans on building civilization, right? Like imagine the totality of that. Building not just a civilization, a community of housing and business and people, but we're also building spiritually, right? And idealistically as well. Like that's just like, what an idea, what a phenomenal thought. And like it's a big thing. It's a very big thing. But let's continue. He says, what do the great financiers of Wall Street, the captains of industry, the statesmen, the great corporation attorneys, the inventors, the physicians, the authors, what do each of these contribute to the sum of human happiness but the power of their thought? So he's saying all the inventions, the financiers, just about any and every industry, any type of business, any type of community, any type of whatever service, it all leads back to the contribution first within their thought. Because remember, every service, everything first has its beginning and origin as an idea, as a thought. Amazon first existed as a thought, as an idea in Jeff Bezos, when he seen the potential in the internet, right, when it was growing. Elon Musk saw the he saw the potential in Tesla. He didn't even create Tesla, as far as my understanding. He didn't even create Tesla. He took it over, right? But he turned it into something greater than what it was because of his thinking, because of how he thought. Hannah was saying it is our thinking. Anything great that has ever been achieved in this world, it originated as a thought process in the person who produced it. He says thought is the energy by which the law of attraction is brought into operation, which eventually manifests in abundance. The universal mind is static mind, or substance in equilibrium. It is differentiated into form by our power to think. Thought is the dynamic phase of mind. Now remember that picture that I drew in a part many times back, and how As I said earlier, we're all mechanisms. We're biological mechanisms for the expression of the one universal mind that has its center in consciousness, that is consciousness, and is centered within us through our I am. But our ability to think and to visualize and form a mental picture is the very thing that forms the blueprint out of how this power is going to manifest and emerge in our lives. Right? The power is something that just is. But when it's attached to an actual blueprint, a goal, an idea, something that has a foundation, a foundational thought, a thought with structure, then it's able to manifest itself to create that structure as a material experience. Because since our consciousness is the universal consciousness, and since thought is consciousness in motion, thought is the power, the vibratory force that turns this infinite power into a legitimate directory, a power that is directed towards something. It allows the power to manifest in a form. And again, your ideal is the blueprint of how that power is going to manifest. It's the blueprint of the form. Power depends upon consciousness of power. Unless we use it, we shall lose it. And unless we are conscious of it, we cannot use it. Remember, we have to have an understanding. We have to know about its existence in order for us to truly use it for our benefit. He says the use of this power depends upon attention. The degree of attention determines our capacity for the acquirement of knowledge, which is another name for power. Attention has been held to be the distinguishing mark of genius. The cultivation of attention depends upon practice. Again, this is what going into the silence is all about. It's about reprogramming your mind and your thought process to be held towards a specific ideal for an extended length of time, aside from distractions. Because the minute you're distracted and you pull your thought from one thing to another, you stop feeding the ideal which you have, because now you're feeding something else. Right? You cut off the source of its manifestation, which is you yourself. It's your mind. It's very interesting too, because he's telling us that attention is the mark of a genius. Even Einstein said, it's not that he says it's not that I'm smarter than anybody else. He says it's the fact that I stick to a question longer than somebody else. Einstein said it's the fact that he sticks to the question longer than the next guy, which allows him to find the answer to that question. As Hanno even said before, when it comes to the usage of this power, when it comes to the use of this power, it's dependent upon your attention towards the object in view, because somebody focused on finding the law of gravity. Gravity was found, right? Because somebody was focused on finding the speed of light. The speed of light was found. They gave their attention to it, and they stuck to that question long enough for it to be revealed to them. He says the incentive of attention is interesting. The greater the interest, the greater the attention. The greater the attention, the greater the interest. Action and reaction. Begin by paying attention. Before long you will have aroused interest. This interest will attract more attention, and this attention will produce more interest, and so on. This practice will enable you to cultivate the power of attention. So what he told us right there is that in order to cultivate, a great way to cultivate attention is to use it towards something that already catches your attention, that you already find mentally stimulating for you, that is intriguing for you. Because the more you attend to it and the more you learn about it and the more it intrigues you, the more attention you're going to give to it, the more you're going to learn about it, the more it'll intrigue you. And the more you begin to absorb the wisdom of whatever it is you're giving your attention to in your life. Okay. And so on. He says, this practice will enable you to cultivate the power of attention. This week, concentrate upon your power to create. Seek insight, perception. Try to find a logical basis for the faith which is in you. Let the thought dwell on the fact that the physical man lives. Excuse me. Sorry. That the physical man lives and moves and has his being in the sustainer of all organic life, air that he must breathe to live. Then let the thought rest on the fact that the spiritual man also lives and moves and has his being in a similar but subtler energy upon which he must depend for life, and that as in the physical world no life assumes form until after a seed is sown, and no higher fruit than that of the parent stock can be produced, so in the spiritual world no effect can be produced until the seed is sown, and the fruit will depend upon the nature of the seed, so that the results which you secure depend upon your perception of law in the mighty domain of causation, the highest evolution of human consciousness. Now we're going to end this with a quote by Emerson. Emerson says, "There is no thought in my mind, but it quickly tends to convert itself into a power and organizes a huge instrumentality of means." End quote. So Emerson said, no matter what, whatever thought he holds in mind will immediately convert itself into something that becomes the instrument for the attainment of the thought of the ideal which he had. Now this is very powerful, the way Mr. Hanel ended this. He told us that, hey, just as our physical body, we need to breathe air. Air is the absolute main source of our existence when it comes to our physical being, because we know we could go days without food, we go days without water, we go days without anything except air. The minute we lose our ability to breathe, let's say within just in a couple minutes, you could suffocate, you could die, right? Just in a few minutes without air. And he's saying the exact same thing is dependent upon our spiritual nature, that our physical body needs to breathe air. Our spiritual body also needs to breathe in the spirit of life. Now, he didn't exactly say here what it is, but they call it the pranic energy. They call it ether, right? The ethereal spiritual energy. Because I know it is even said that we're not just breathing the physical air for our physical body, but we're simultaneously breathing in pranic energy, which is the spiritual energy, which is giving our spirit life and food. And what's powerful about this too, when he talks about the fruit or the seeds that we sow, that even though we may, like they say, apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Even though we are very similar to our parents, no matter what, we're going to be similar to our parents because it's a subconscious thing. We came from their seed, right? Their DNA is within us. We're the offspring of their DNA physically. But when it comes to spiritually, our DNA, our spiritual DNA is the offspring of something greater, something higher, which is the infinite, the universal mind. And we could plant the seeds of thought, the ideals which we wish to manifest in our lives. And this in turn is dependent upon our perception of law, our understanding of universal law, and the seat we have in the mighty domain of causation. Because remember, in order to manifest the powers of God in our life, we have to we have to embody the Spirit of God first. And through the embodiment of the Spirit and of our thinking, of God's thinking, it will enable us to live on a higher plane of existence as humans. Again, like I said earlier, enabling us to manifest the characteristics of God in the flesh, like Christ came to teach us and to give us. And as Hanel says at the very end, he says, this itself is the highest domain, the highest evolution of human consciousness. So he's saying the highest we can live as humans is ultimately the kingdom of heaven, establishing the kingdom of heaven, having the kingdom within us, establishing Christ, living by Christ, and living at the right hand of God, which is wisdom. That is the highest evolution of human consciousness. That is our ultimate purpose as humans. It's very interesting, very interesting. Because I know Christ does tell us that we can do everything that he did if we will listen and understand. And he also told us that there will be a point where we will do it better than he did. Because once that understanding is established and we continue to grow and evolve from that understanding, we will move forward in our evolution towards our godlyhood, our godly nature. And as Abel Ellen tells us in the Message of New Thought, that there is absolutely no limit to the growth and potential of man. That even the greatest things that we've done today doesn't even come close or touch the surface of what the future man is going to be able to do. That we haven't even scratched the surface. Like the greatest humans that we know today still haven't even touched the surface of what we humans will be doing in the future. It's very interesting. And that's the power of New Thought, because it establishes the mindset necessary for the attainment of those things. Okay, that is the end of part 18. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching, and we will see you next week for part 19.